Good evening, folks. This is Ben Lummis, the school superintendent. We are having a community forum on the East Gloucester Veterans Building Project, which is before, funding for that is before voters on November 3rd. And so we're hoping to help educate community members about the project and what what the opportunities here, what happens with a yes vote and a no vote. And so let me share my screen and we'll get going on a presentation. And then after the presentation, we'll have time for question and answers. And we'll show you how to submit questions. Matt, can you see the presentation? Thumbs up. Excellent. Great. All right, so let's go here. We're going to have a presentation of community forums. They'll be very similar to each other, but we're offering them at 3 different times each of the next Tuesdays. So 5:30 for those folks who need a little earlier time, 6:30 and 7:30. But they'll be basically the same information at each meeting. We may get better at the presentation as it goes along, but it'll be basically the same information. So if you see one, you've seen most of them, but it's important to tell people about them, and because it's an important vote for the community and want to make sure people are well informed. Our presentation tonight will have 4 parts. So the Gloucester Public Schools are long-term facilities planning. We want to show folks how this fits into the longer-term approach to rebuilding our elementary schools. Have a couple sections. One about the why now, why do this now? We'll look at the shape of the schools are in now. Part 2 of that is what will it cost, and we'll talk about the cost of the project, the timeline of the project, and also what happens if it doesn't go forward, and the ongoing cost to the city and taxpayers if it doesn't go forward. We'll also look at the new school. We'll take a look at the new school as well, inside and out. Some of the latest diagrams that we have, and then we'll have a chance for Q&A. So we'll have about 20-25 minutes of presentation because there's a lot to this question, and want to make sure people are fully informed. So just in terms of long-term facilities planning, we have a 3-part plan to rebuild our elementary schools, and then want to show you we've been at this for a while. This is not a new effort. So the 3-part long-term plan to rebuild elementary schools that were built in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Hard to believe that all of our schools, the youngest one is Plum Cove, which makes it deep into its 50s. And West Parish, the 3 parts are first West Parish. So that was replaced in 2016 after being originally built in 1949. Sort of a post-World War II building boom in elementary schools. The second part of the 3-part plan is replacing East Gloucester and veterans. That's the project we're talking about tonight. With MSBA, that began in 2016. And as you can see, if it's scheduled to be completed in 2023 if there's funding for it. And so you can see that's about a 7-year process from sort of concept or beginning, especially if we're working with MSBA to actual finish construction. And then the third part of the 3-part plan would be addressing Beeman and Plum Cove. As you can see, Beeman and Plum Cove are also old. Beeman is as old as veterans. Plum Cove is a little newer, but those are anticipated to take 7 to 10 years as well. But they are dependent upon whether East Gloucester and veterans go forward. We'll talk about later how if East Gloucester and veterans do not go forward, that puts Plum Cove and Beeman on the back burner again. So what we're hoping to do as a city, as a school district, as a community, is move our 4 schools, our 4 older elementary schools, and to become more like West Parish. Right now, we have significant inequity in terms of the quality of our schools and the physical plant. And we'll talk more about the current state of East Gloucester and veterans in just a moment. So just a reminder to everyone in the community that we actually have been at this for a while. While some folks are just tuning in now in 2020, this has really been underway really since shortly after West Parish was completed with the application that Massachusetts School Building Authority. And then that has had a number of steps, all very thorough, all very public. There have been 60+ public meetings over the last few years between site selection and feasibility designs and cost projections and reviewing options. All those meetings have been public and open to the public and documented. And but it's now 2020, and that's really the third phase of the MSBA process, and they've approved us to keep on going and to get an MSBA grant if the city approves the remainder of the funding. And we'll talk about those specific dollars right now, but we've been at this since 2016, and it'll be 3 more years if the community supports the funding for it. So the question is, why now? And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is the shape our current schools are in. Another why now is because it's very an opportune moment on a variety of levels in terms of the funding and costs and what it would take to actually pay for it. So we'll talk about that too. But let's start with why we need to replace East Gloucester and veterans. So just some highlights here. They're at this point too old, too small, too outdated. The facilities are substandard. They're at this point, they're really compromising student learning. And they do that in a variety of ways. They do that because the systems are inadequate, too hot, too cold, too wet. The plumbing and electrical and technology are all out of date. Security systems are essentially non-existent, especially these days in our concerns for heightened security in our schools. We have poor work conditions for staff, but also for students. You'll see in pictures in just a moment how many of our most vulnerable learners, special education students, English learners, are not learning in small classrooms, small spaces, but they're learning in the hallways. They're learning in cramped spaces, that sort of thing. And so really a lack of space for special education and intervention support. So I'm going to hand it over to Principal Amy Pasquarello and Principal Matt Fusco, and they're going to just describe some of what you would see if you go into our schools these days.
All right, so I have this slide. Again, my name's Matt Fusco. I'm principal at the Veterans Memorial School. As you can see, these are 2 typical classrooms. One to your left is East Gloucester. To your right is Veterans. Both you can see they lack natural light. There are technology issues, trying to run new technology into old style buildings and rooms, and they lack the space that's required in newer buildings. So we're finding that the space issues and as well as the way that they're set up just isn't perfect for what we need.
It looks like these classrooms look like they're pretty big right now. That's because we have half the number of desks in them because of right. COVID. But you see out-of-date desks, out-of-date furniture, out-of-date shelving, and shelving in a way that things are piled high because there's inadequate space for everything that the teachers need.
Correct.
So here are some pictures of where we have interventions. You notice some are in a divided room. The one with the blue table is a divided room, so it's a smaller space. Then we have some hallway spaces where students receive interventions. These are some of our most vulnerable students that are getting their services in a public space, which is not necessarily ideal. In addition, what you're not seeing here is because we purposely did not show pictures with students in it is physical therapy. So for an evaluation that often has to take place in a hallway because they have to move a certain amount of the length. There's not a space for that. At East Gloucester, in order to get your OT services or occupational therapy services, you need to walk through a kindergarten classroom to get there. So it is not the best learning environment for some of our most vulnerable students.
Both schools lack some specific spaces for our specialists. So that would be music, art, and physical education. As you can see in both schools, we share both a gym and a cafeteria. So actually it's an auditorium too. So it's the gym-a-cafetorium is the term we use for that, which is not beyond presenting a scheduling nightmare. It's also takes time away from students being able to get into the physical education space. Neither school has an art room. Again, that's a really big problem. It affects the curriculum deeply. It does not allow students to be able to keep work for specific days and times, to work on things over a long period of time because there's no way to store the art. And And of course, music room at East Gloucester has no music room. They are currently up on the stage, I believe.
We were on the stage, but it's now our dismissal room. Sorry.
room. So again, things have changed because of COVID, but they have no music room.
Yep. So these teachers are traveling on these carts. You have art on a cart, music on a cart, East Gloucester, no rooms, but they traveled place to place like vagabonds each day.
All right, I get the next, I don't know why I got assigned the student bathrooms one, but anyways, student bathrooms, what you'll find is that these are all old, outdated bathrooms. They lack handicapped accessibility. One of the things you'll find is like these two bathrooms service a large number of students. I figured out that the bathroom on your left probably services over 70 kids per day. That's just the boys' room. Because of that's in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade wing at Veterans. I believe East Gloucester has similar numbers to that. Like I said, it's mostly outdated. I think they kind of speak for themselves, really.
Yep. Great.
So one of the things I'm most proud about at East Gloucester is how professional our teachers are and how dedicated they are. And professionals, I truly believe, deserve a professional workspace. At East Gloucester, their teacher workroom is in the hallway. The first 2 pictures are the workroom in 2 places in the hallway. If you can see in the picture in the far left where that copier is, where the brick meets the modular, today it was raining in that spot indoors where that seal is. The rain was coming in heavily. So it's not only a cramped space, a public space for their workspace, it's often wet. And the right-hand side, that is a veterans space that is very cramped and not enough room to get their work ready for the day.
Great.
So the basement at East Gloucester has gotten a lot of talk. If you look at the pictures, there is rock ledge in the basement. It is very uneven. It is wet. There's a sign that there's a lot of asbestos down there. The stream, is the video not showing?
No, it's not. No.
It's not showing, but there is a stream that is always in the basement. When I took the picture or the video, we had a drought, not like today, but there was still water running through the basement. There's always water on the floor, whether it's wet outside or not. Our water table is pretty low or high, I guess. So our electrical and heating systems are very outdated. The second picture in, you can see the water on the floor right by our furnace. That water is always there. You can see the watermark that it sometimes rises and sometimes it goes a little less. We are on fuses. We had the hallway lights went out 2 weeks ago and I had to flick the switch for the circuit breaker. The fuse was crackling, so DPW came quickly down to fix that. So our systems are very outdated and costly to upgrade.
Great. So I mean, it's pretty clear that while the DPW has done a fantastic job the last few years, last number of years, trying to maintain these buildings, you can only patch so much before they can't really fix it anymore. And that's really where we are approaching here. So we're going to talk about just the cost of building the new school, also the cost of not building the new school, and then really just discuss the fact that there is not a no-cost option. To maintain these buildings will cost a fair bit of money, no matter which way we go. So just on the schedule here, so these first ones, these bullets have all been accomplished. The next step for the project is the vote on the project funding on November 3rd. That's question 3. If that is successful, we go quickly into design development and also construction documents. That's the final stage of design, where you can actually build a building from. Site prep and demolition at Veterans School would start in July, and then construction starts literally a year from now, and then takes almost 2 years to complete. So building complete is the summer of 2023. So, but that all is predicated on how the vote goes on November 3rd. So let's look at costs. So you see the total project budget. The design that's been done up until now is one of its main purposes is to become set on a total project budget, which is $66.7 million. Because Gloucester has done such a great job working with the MSBA, they have provided an estimated grant that they will reimburse us up to $26.9 million, depending on how much we spend on the project. That means that the city of Gloucester shares $39.8 million, okay? Both those numbers, 26.9, which is what the MSBA is offering the city, and $39.8 million are important numbers because they're going to come into play as we look at other paths forward. It's super important to realize that at this point, it's also a good idea to go forward because of the borrowing rates. The interest rates that are available now are historic and unprecedented. And that's an advantage because it lowers the cost for borrowing that money for capital projects such as this. And so that's good timing. In some ways it's fortunate timing, but it is what is happening right now. And that's another reason to go forward because those borrowing rates are so low that it actually makes it quite helpful to borrow now to fund the project. There are additional community benefits and ancillary costs. So as folks, I hope know at this point, the City Council has made a commitment to new ball fields at Green Street. That design development still would have to happen. That's dependent on a yes vote in November. That will go forward if there's a yes vote. Where the East Gloucester School is now would be create open space for the community and for that neighborhood. Another piece of the cost would be the temporary school space for the veteran students for the 2 years that the building is being built. What's important to realize is these aren't costs that are added onto the debt exclusion vote on November. These will be paid, bonded by the city, like the city does often with projects. And that debt service is paid out of the general fund. Very importantly, these costs do not in any way create an additional tax burden for Gloucester residents. This is part of the annual budget that's already accounted for through raising revenue through the ordinary taxes. There are no additions because of these costs here. The cost of homeowners is very important and has been talked about quite a bit. The way that you figure this out is through the cost of the payment on the loans to fund the project. That is calculated at this point 20 cents per year per $1,000 of home value. One way to think about that is, what's the value of your home? If it's $500,000, that's about approximately $100 per year. It's actually just a little bit less than $100 per year. The borrowing rates, which I just talked about, also result in this low annual cost to homeowners or a lower annual cost to homeowners. If those interest rates were higher than they are right now at these very low rates, then that cost to homeowners would be even higher than it is. But if the city can take advantage of these rates soon, then you lock in quite a low possible cost for each homeowner. So that's another reason advantage to going for this project at this point, for the voters to go forward at this point. So there's also a question about what happens if Gloucester votes no. And the challenge there is that the buildings still exist and they still remain in the very poor shape. So I do want to point out two things: the $39.8 million, that gets us what you'll see, a pretty spectacular, pretty wonderful building for 2 schools for about 440 students, $39.8 million. That's important to remember that number. If Gloucester votes no in November, we immediately lose the $26.9 million from MSBA. And if you want any hope of having them to help fund us, we have to restart with them from the beginning. And it's a competitive process. I think when we were accepted into the MSBA, there was 17 projects and 90 plus that applied. So there's no guarantee that money will come back to us in any way, shape, or form. And it ultimately could be lost to us. There's no guarantee of state funding. take another 7 or 8 years as we restart the process. And so likely, we'll not be looking at something completed until 2007 or 2008. Now, the other challenge with delaying is that construction costs and all costs escalate. And so instead of $66.9 million, in this case, actually, remember, the cost of Gloucester is $39.8 million because we have funding from MSBA. Sorry. If we don't have funding for MSBA, then we're on the hook. Gloucester's on the hook. Taxpayers are on the hook for that whole $80 to $90 million, which is a far cry. I mean, literally about double what it would cost the city today if we go forward. Those are just some of the facts about the numbers in terms of what we risk in terms of losing the money from MSBA and how projects escalate over 5 to 7 years. Construction costs always escalate. There are a couple of other options here. So this one would be $80 to $90 million to replace both schools with a comparable building that we're planning right now. Here we have 2 different options for repair renovation, and both of them sort of are sorely lacking when you compare them to a brand new building. Number one there is repair only and code upgrades. So the challenge here is you are replacing the system. So maybe the roof. This is for both schools: roof, heating, windows, not modulars as well. You could with this cost, but that doesn't get you a building, a new building. It doesn't get you additional space. It doesn't get you a gym or an art room or a music room. It doesn't get you space for special education students or English language learners. You don't actually extend the life in number one. You don't extend the life of the building. You sink in $30 million or so, and ultimately you've got to replace the school still at some point in the not too distant future. So you're looking at $32 million plus replacement of buildings, well over $100 million versus if we go forward now, you're looking at a $40 million investment by the city. And then renovation and no additions. This is sort of like someone was explaining to me earlier. For if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, or say 1-bedroom apartment, but you need a 2-bedroom apartment, no matter how nice you make that kitchen or you make that bedroom or you make that living room, you still have a 1-bedroom apartment and you still need a 2-bedroom apartment. So in this number 2 option, renovation, no additions, we repair systems, we add art and music rooms, we lose the auditorium because we have to make classrooms and administration space into it, but we still end up with an inferior building that remains too small for the number of students, too small bathrooms, too small for special education, too small for our other educational spaces. So you have something that looks pretty good, but it's inferior and doesn't actually fit the needs of all our students. And for both schools, that would cost $60 million to the city. No guarantee of any reimbursement from anybody. And you compare that to the 39.8 we have that would cost the city today if we go forward. It's very important that whenever we make a decision in the city, that we understand, what the costs for not making that decision are. And these are some pretty stark costs of a no option. These buildings will still need work. They still will need repair. And in some cases, they still will need replacement. But there's another issue here as well, is the long-term plan that I mentioned in the very beginning. Essentially, if you don't go forward now, it stops the 3-part plan in its tracks. We have to continue to manage and support and work on East Gloucester and veterans. That further delays any action on Beeman and Plum Cove. And as we all know, those aren't getting any younger. Beeman is as old as veterans, and Plum Cove is a little bit newer. We're putting all 4 schools still have to be replaced, but we're just putting them off for longer and longer. And that, of course, raises the cost even further. So as someone likes to say, I like to say, if you got a pair of jeans that you love, they've been with you for a while, they're comfortable, they fit in all the right places, you've got a lot of good memories with them. That's the same for schools. But unfortunately, with those old pair of jeans, you can only keep patching them for so long before you got to get a new set. And I was at East Gloucester just last week, and had some time to talk with parents, to see some parents dropping off their kids in the morning, and talked to a few teachers, and looked at the ball field, and you just really saw, it really struck me that those teachers who work so hard, and those students who are so happy to go to that school with their teachers, and those parents who really love being there in that community, they really deserve a new school, one like West Parish, one we see in other neighboring communities. Those teachers at East Gloucester veterans, they work so hard. Those students, they work so hard. They really deserve something that will last them for another 50, 40 years. They don't have to worry about it being too hot or too cold or raining in their classrooms or raining in their offices. So what we want to show you now is just a few things about what the school will look like. I do want to just point out to folks that schools look different these days than when they were built 50, 60 years ago. They have more natural light, they've got more space, and they're more energy efficient. And a lot of that has to do with the materials they use and the lighting they use, but also the windows they use. The dedicated rooms for art and music and media center and library, they have flexible spaces which are new because we use them to combine classrooms or for project work or for hands-on learning, because we know now that kids need that type of learning as well. And there's small group rooms to support special education students, provide interventions for students who are struggling or need some advanced work. And the fact of the matter is there are examples all over the Commonwealth of these schools that have been built in the last 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years. Towns have been at this for a while. West Parish is a great example right here in our own city. But you can look as just down the road in Beverly or Manchester, Essex, they're building or they have built schools just like we're about to show you. And also Winthrop, Waltham, Fall River, all over the state. They're building schools like we have in West Parish, and it's time, and it's in West and East Gloucester and veterans. We can do that for the same for them, and then continue on to Beeman and Plum Cove. So I'm going to show you a short video here, which has Matt and Amy narrating. Give me a moment to figure out the technology here. And I'll be right with you. And we are going to hope that you can see that, right?
My name is Amy
Can you hear that?
Pasquale. I am the principal of East Gloucester Elementary School. Please join Mr. Fusco and I as we take you on a journey through the new East Gloucester Veterans Memorial Building.
Hello, my name is Matt Fusco, and I am the principal of the Veterans Memorial School. In this slide, you are looking at the bird's eye view of the building. Things to notice would be that the building is in basically 2 parts. Section to your right houses the art room, gymnasium, cafeteria, library, and administration offices. The section to the rear is the academic wing. On each floor, you will have 2 grade levels, 4 classrooms of each. This is a great view of the entry into the building off of Webster Street. As you can see, cars will be off the street quickly to alleviate any traffic congestion. Here you see the building as if you were looking down Webster Street towards Eastern Avenue. There will be a separate bus pickup area that will be closed off by a large iron gate during the school day, allowing for an even larger play area for students in both kindergarten and 1st grade.
The kindergarten playground is one of many playgrounds on the property. It is easy to access from the kindergarten classrooms and features age-appropriate play structures.
This is the spectacular view you will get as you enter the front of the building. On your right is the entrance to the cafeteria, and on the left is the entrance to the administration offices. I get the bigger office, Ms. Pasquarello. Notice that the stairway to the upper level is on your right, and underneath the stairway is a natural and very funky seating area.
The beautiful cafeteria features a wider range of seating options, quiet dining rooms, and floor-to-ceiling windows to let in natural light.
This is the upper lobby and what you would see at the top of the stairway. On your left is the library and STEM area with direct access to the art room. Check out the natural wood beams and the height of the ceiling. I personally like that the balcony railing is see-through to make the area look larger.
The Media Center, or Curiosity Commons, serves as the hub of learning. It is equipped with interactive technology, space for small groups or whole classes. The Curiosity Commons is attached to the art room, which will have retractable doors for interdisciplinary projects.
Here is where the magic happens. This is a typical classroom. On the left, you will see fully enclosed cubbies for our students. On the right, you see a student writing on a foldable wall that can be opened to allow students from the other classrooms of that grade to enter and exit, creating collaborative and free-flowing learning environments. Each classroom will have smart technology, and also built in will be smaller learning areas for one-to-one or small group work.
This is one of the 3 extended learning areas in the building. There's one on each floor to be shared between 2 grade levels. Please notice the flexible seating, the breakout spaces, and room for project-based learning.
One of the signature additions to this new building is that the students and the community as a whole are going to have access to a full-size gymnasium. Included in the gymnasium is a stage for all types of performances.
The raised stage will be accessible to all and will be complete with proper lighting and sound for performances.
This is a closer view of the front of the building and the common area off of the cafeteria. Note the seating areas, natural rocks, and the wooden columns. Here you can see that the cafeteria will have floor-to-ceiling glass to allow lots of natural light. There will also be access to the playground directly from the cafeteria for recess.
In the back of the building, there are multiple opportunities to play and learn. The large playground will have various play structures, swings, a basketball hoop, multiple hardscape areas, and a turf field. This area will be gated during the school day for safety. It will also be an asset to the neighborhood when school is not in session.
This is a ground level view of the back of the school showing a large play area for students in grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. The black-topped area will also act as a driveway for parents during the arrival and dismissal times. Cars will travel around the playground and towards the front of the building and then out onto Eastern Ave. Again, buses will be entering another area separate from the cars.
We hope you have enjoyed our tour of the new building. The journey to get to this design has been years in the making. This project has been presented to the MSBA and has received high praise. The only question left is who gets the front office, Mr. Fusco. The next step will be to vote on question number 3 on November 3rd. My name is Amy Pasquarello.
1 second there, sorry. Okay, just a couple things, then we'll show you how to ask questions. We're almost at the Q&A part here. Just give me one moment. So just to recap some of the benefits. So, you know, as I was saying before, veterans East Gloucester students and teachers would have a modern school to support all their learning needs. At this point, if this project is successful and we go forward with it, 2/3 of Gloucester elementary school students, so that's West Parish, East Gloucester, and veterans would be in modern, up-to-date, appropriate sized, and energy-efficient schools. For the first time ever, all veterans and all East Gloucester students will have dedicated spaces for physical art, physical education, art, music, cafeteria, and also performing arts. We have safer, more secure buildings, improved traffic patterns with safer drop-off and pickup. And then there are additional community benefits. There, as Matt said in the video, community access to a brand new school gym, full-size school gym for, you know, athletics, performing arts space for community arts and that sort of thing. The city council has committed to new ball field or field at Green Street to replace the current field. Tomorrow night, just in case folks don't know, the school committee is taking up the rededication of Meadows Playground to affirm their support of Private Meadows and maintain that as an honor to him. That'll be taken up tomorrow at the school committee. And then also the community will have more open space at the site of East Gloucester, which will be community open space. So that ends our presentation and just information about the project and where it's been and how it fits into the larger context and long-term plans, and then also some of the costs. We have questions and answers. You'll see in your screen that there's a Q&A icon where you can, if you click on the Q&A icon there that says Q&A, area will come up where you can submit questions that the panelists will see, and they'll answer those questions as they come in. You can also There's also on our home website, there's a place to submit questions too, but for tonight, the easiest place is just if you hit the Q&A link, and then you'll see a text box where you type in your question and then hit send. Let me stop the share. And if I've got to put those up again, that's totally fine, but let's see if we are having any questions coming in. About 20 attendees here. We'll wait a little bit to see if there are questions. So again, you should see a Q&A link on the bottom, and that should open up a text box where you can type in a question and then hit submit. There we go. Is there anything at Webster Street to be named for private meadows? From Mr. Kevin Perrin. Jonathan Pope, are you on the phone call here?
Sure, I am.
Oh, great.
The Joseph Mados playground was dedicated in the 30s and has been existent since then. And we have every intention to rededicate the playground at the new school for Joseph Mados. If on Green Street, when they build the new softball field to replace Mados Field, softball field, that could be renamed or dedicated to Joseph Mados as well. But that would be something that the schools don't have any control over. The city would have to do that. So you'd have to ask the mayor about that. But definitely the playground would be rededicated. We did the same thing at West Parish. And we have done that in the past as best we can to always honor the veterans.
From Pamela Steele, can you talk about the potential cost of the excavation cost of veterans? I'll talk about, at this point, that those costs are included in the total project cost, which we shared with you. I don't know if Brad Dorr or Jonathan Rich can talk about anything specific about excavation costs, but and just check with me that those are already included in the total project cost, correct?
So that's correct. So I think the question is probably more centered around, some of the soils conditions, which we've talked about out there, which are not as great as we would like. And have we incorporated those costs for what are called rammed aggregate piers in the budget? And the answer to that is yes.
Okay, great. From Olympia, did you give architect a budget, or are you just going with what they tell you for costs? If someone could answer about, there's a very specific process that the MSBA has us go through in terms of, designer selection is what they call it. If someone on the call could explain that further, I'm not sure, Tom, if you're there. But how it's determined that the architect, the budget for the project and how that's
Sure. Okay, sure. Let me do this.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay, hello. Yes, the MSBA focuses initially on establishing the educational program, what's the needs of the community, and then that sets the premise for then determining the cost. So it's really educationally driven. So you're basically meeting the needs of the teachers and students first, and then establishing the cost to do that. And so then they also look at the overall budgets relative to other similar projects. And so we're right in the middle of the range one would expect for a project of this size and scale.
And then am I correct in that in terms of project cost, or in this case, architect costs, the MSBA reviews those and makes sure they're in line with other costs and other projects? Is that correct?
Right. Every project is unique, and MSBA understands that. So, they look at the relative cost to other projects, but they realize, everything's unique in terms of, the size and the locations and everything else. So, their funding is stipulated on certain allowable reimbursement for each area site cost. building cost and whatever, so they apply that to every project. So, but they really do focus on really being sure that the community is meeting the educational needs of their community through the new project. So they really focus on having them be, the designs be educationally driven, not just a design and then you try to fit the teaching inside the building. So it's a collaborative effort. And I think this has gone very, very well between the design team, the educators, and so I think it's been a really good process.
Great.
I would just add to that too, Tom, that when the schematic design was completed, it's not just the architect that does the estimating for that, right? We have an independent estimator, and then that's also checked, okay, through the construction manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then those two estimates are reconciled to get to the final number.
Right.
Yeah, I would just add one other thing. This is John Rich from the construction manager firm. When we did the first budget, we took a hard look at where we were against typical benchmark school projects, and the team felt we were a little on the high side of that. So we actually went through an effort to see where there might be some things that could be scaled back a little bit, and we did that. And we took several $1 million out of the project and got it in line with kind of the standards for other schools that are being built in this time frame, and also very similar to West Parish on a cost per square foot.
Great. From Kevin Perrin, just wants a clarification on his question about Green Street dedication, and will anything at the new facility on Webster Street retain Private Matos' name? So my understanding is that the school committee would like to, and will discuss tomorrow, retaining Private Matos' name on the playground. And then there also, as a building is built, something that's under the control of the school committee, certainly other parts of that, I mean, the school will need to be named, but also other parts are the auditorium, the gymnasium, the library, those can also be named for individuals. But that will be a process the school committee will take up. But I mean, just tomorrow night, they are taking up about rededicating the playground to Private Matos. Olympia has more of a comment about seeing Richard Alexander's comment on the YouTube video. I don't know about the YouTube video and making comments on it. I don't know if that's, Amy, do you have your hand up there? I'm not sure.
So the YouTube channel did not have comments enabled. So if somebody was able to put a comment up, I'm not sure how that happened, but it was to put it out. I'm certain there's plenty of comments that are out on social media, but it was just not a checkbox that I had turned on.
Okay, great. Pat Amaral has a few questions, so we'll take one at a time here. How many students are currently enrolled in East Gloucester and Veterans School?
I believe it's 210 and 217, giving you a total of 427. And the design point for the new school is 440, which was an agreement that was struck between the district and the MSBA through the process that you go through as part of their initial eligibility period requirements.
Mm-hmm. The next question is, how did our schools become in such bad shape as this forum is stating? What are we doing for maintenance now? Well, this goes back to down to the Proposition 2.5 in, I believe that was sort of the mid 80s, maybe late 80s. I can't remember at this point. But that had municipalities' ability to raise funds for and raise taxes for projects like this, for maintenance, for capital projects. That really made a dent and made an impact on it. I will say, from what I have learned lately, since the DPW took over maintenance of our schools, that things have been going quite well. But again, these are schools that are 70, 60 years old. They get a lot of wear and tear. Systems wear out, roofs wear out. And like that old pair of jeans I talked about, at some point the patching, you can't just keep patching things. So I will hand it to the Department of Public Works. They are doing a good job with old schools. But as we talked about, not only are there systems problems, there are space problems, there are modular problems. Those wear out and are approaching the end of their useful life. But also there's just the ability to put forward the educational program for students who have special needs or English learners or need small groups, projects, that sort of stuff, art. These are things, even a dedicated, physical education space. These are things that didn't exist or weren't seen as priorities in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but they certainly are a value to the community these days. So it's not just about the old schools, it's also about what they can actually fit inside them. I'll have to refer the next question to maybe Jonathan Pope. Have you talked to Private Matos' family about your plans about dedicating the Green Street Park to him?
Well, I've written to both Lisa Templeton, who is a great niece of Joseph Matos, as well as Veronica Giacchillo, I think that's how you might pronounce the name, and explain to them that we would definitely be the playground at the Veterans School, the current playground at the Veterans School, and the future playground at the combined school would be rededicated to Joseph Matos. As far as the field, the new softball field at Green Street, that would be our recommendation, but it's up to the city because that would be a city facility. And it would be the recommendation to rename it for Joseph Matos, but that's what we can do. And those are the two I've contacted, and we, Lisa Templeton has responded and thanked me for the information. So.
And then what do you think about that his family doesn't want his field to be moved? Jonathan, you and I have spoken about this, and if you can talk about, there have been a number of examples where memorials or honoraries or dedications have been moved in the city. Is that right?
Am I still on here? Yes. Yeah, there are any number of things. I mean, it's right now, the Vietnam veterans are trying to find a more appropriate space for their memorial, which is at the high school. So the idea that things are locked into a space is, is a little bit hard to deal with. If everything happened like that, we would still have a Blinman school and a Lane school, and all of these schools that were in a fuller school. The names, we do the best we can, but Gloucester does a great job of dedicating practically every intersection in Gloucester is dedicated to some veteran from previous wars, and so we do the best we can. But there will be the opportunities to name some spaces in the new school.
I'm looking for questions here. How will someone enter the Green Street playground? Are you using Ledgemont Avenue as an access, and what other streets? My understanding is there's no design yet for Green Street. There's a commitment by the city council to build recreation there and ball fields. But does anyone on the call know anything more than that?
I think that the intent is to have the primary access, coming not through the existing neighborhood, but more from the Schoolhouse Road side, that access point.
But there is existing access in a small parking lot off of Green Street. I don't think although Ledgemont does abut the Green Street property, I don't think there's any sort of sensible way to bring people in through there.
Okay. With COVID increasing now in Gloucester, how can our city officials feel that this project is in the best interest with no outside space to expand for post-COVID compared to other schools where there's more space, Beeman at 22 acres, Plum Cove with 16 acres. I don't know if those numbers are accurate. I don't know personally. COVID is increasing in the city now, like it's increasing in many parts of the state. But there's going to be life after COVID. And this building, if it's built, will last for, another 40, 50, 60 years, like the ones we have already. And so what we do know is that the systems within the school building will be, will better serve students. There'll be more spacing possible in larger classrooms in the buildings, and also better HVAC than we currently have. Our HVAC is handling it right now. It's pretty good, but it's also old and needs to be replaced. So in terms of health and safety, I think it's a pretty sure bet that new buildings will be in better shape than the older ones. And we are all hoping and planning for a time where we're post-COVID. Beyond that, I'm just looking for questions. There are a few comments here, but not questions.
Ben, could I just say something that, we had to look, when we were looking for a site for the East Gloucester, it had to be more or less within the East Gloucester or the Veterans Catchment Area. And both Beeman and Plum Cove are, although they have a lot of property, are not. We'd be busing kids from East Gloucester to Lanesville. That isn't something that MSBA is looking to do.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to concentrate all students or 8/10 of the students on one site. And as we said before, the plan is then ultimately to address Beeman and Plum Cove. Those buildings will need to be addressed, part of the long-term plan, because they are also towards the end of their useful life. There are other questions about family members with Joseph Matos, and there's some suggestions, I think, about speaking to Reginald Santos, or why have you not spoken to Reginald Santos? Could you speak to Reginald Santos? And also speak to Lisa Temple about the plan to rededicate. So I think those are some suggestions. If anyone's spoken to them, feel free to.
Lisa Templeton. I did communicate with you, Lisa Templeton, about rededication. That won't happen until the new school is built, the actual ceremony. But we did that at Beeman, at West Parish, and we'll do it again.
Okay. So in terms of COVID design, is a new school designed pre-COVID architecturally? If so, should we wait a few years to gain information as to what schools in the future will or should really look like? Can one of our architects or designers address that, or builders as well?
Yeah, so in terms of, is it pre-COVID architecturally? I think the answer to that is yes, in terms of the timing, but in terms of what the building is actually capable of doing, I think that the building itself is as current in the state as the art as we can, in terms of the HVAC systems are out there, the terms of the flexibility that we're affording through the extended learning areas and being able to provide flexibility in the classrooms. So I think there are a lot of features that in a COVID environment that this school would be more readily able to adapt to. I'm not sure if that's the intent of the question, but.
I'd say another, Amy, go ahead.
I would say that as we're trying to find added space to distance students, I would love to have the extended learning areas and the larger classrooms and the facilities to spread out. We would be in much better shape in the new building than we are now in the COVID times.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at West Parish has a gym to use, a cafeteria to use, they have small learning spaces to use. They even have additional administrative spaces that can be used as well. So I think, in terms of spacing, this building certainly would have more space, as you said, Amy, and I couldn't agree with you more on that. In terms of weighting, as we try to explain in the presentation, weighting means more cost. More cost. Costs will not go down; they will only escalate, and the cost will increase in two ways. One, construction cost will increase, but also the cost for borrowing is likely to increase as well. as the cost of borrowing increases, that means a double hit on taxpayers as well. So we do have this unique time right now where we're ready to go. We have $27 million nearly in grants committed by the MSBA, which is a third of the project or more. We also have a borrowing environment which can't get much better. So delay certainly means higher costs to the project and higher costs to taxpayers. We wouldn't want to do that. The question about protecting the EGS open. So when East Gloucester, if it's torn down, and that is committed to becoming open space, Mary Ann seems like she says the question of EGS has been asked since day one. Will it be protected, or would it only have Article 97 placed on it? This was pretty clearly answered at the last city council meeting. Jonathan, if you can take it. Oh no, Jonathan's on the phone. Jonathan, in terms of the decision between protecting the open space at East Gloucester or making it, or having Article 97 protections, those are two different. Yeah, can you address that?
Basically, Article 97, because it's written into the agreement of that the East Gloucester space will become open space. It's written into the agreement that is basically, at this point, state law. It'd be very, very difficult to ever do anything different with that after it becomes open space. So I'm not sure I completely understood the question.
I think the folks are concerned, perhaps, or
Yeah.
they're raising the concern about risk to that open space then becoming something different.
Well, what I'm saying is that Article 97 didn't exist until the mid-70s, and it was put in place in order to protect things like watershed and parklands. And so when we asked to use part of the Meadows Field for the school, we went to the state and made sure that we had went through the correct process, which is to get a disposition on Article 97. So when the state declared that it was okay, it basically required that we trade land, that there be equal or greater value of open space provided. And that is registered in that agreement. So I'm not going to predict what can happen in 2 years from now or 100 years from now, but certainly for the near future, that it's protected, and it's going to be open space.
Okay, I'm looking for, so the question is, where do walkers enter the site? And it will be safe for walkers, parents and students who are walking in. I'm trying to find a visual that will help us with this. Maybe I can look at this. I'll show the site plan maybe. Give me a moment. Do you folks see the site plan from the city council presentation? Can someone explain? So there's access at this point, correct? Is that right?
That's correct. If you
you see
follow
my
that
cursor?
up, yep, keep going and then take a left. Right, that's the primary access from the sidewalk.
Okay. Is there access from the back here at all, or along this sidewalk, or?
Nope, that area is all fenced off.
Okay, all right. So from the sidewalk, so if people come down the sidewalk, assume there are crossing guards helping here, and also this way as well?
Yep, that could be the case, but the idea is to be able to bring, right as you had it before, right, walkers up that sidewalk and then into the building.
Great, okay, super. Thank you. Just trying to sort through the questions here and scroll through them. I don't. What about the woods next to? What about the woods next to East Gloucester? Will that be coming down and meet the requirements? So just in terms of the open space at East Gloucester, will those woods be affected?
No, I don't believe so.
I don't believe there's the restoration of, they will be protected along with the rest of the site to be parklands, but I don't think there's any plans to do anything to them that I know of.
Was there a meeting on the taking of Maxwell Parsons deeded space? Taking of this land? Please explain taking part of Maxwell Parsons deeded space. Does this make, I'm not familiar with this.
Okay, I can talk about that a little bit. When they built East Gloucester School, just as they went through, they put the Maxwell Parsons playground encompassed where the field is now at East Gloucester School, as well as pretty much where the gymnasium is. And Article 97 did not exist in 1948 when they built the school. And but they did go through the appropriate process with the state, whatever that was at the time. And they rationalized it by saying, well, we're putting the gymnasium on this property and its recreational space. But that happened in 1948 or 49, and that's all I know about it. But they went through the process, whatever the process was at that time.
Great. The question about one second here. Woods, answered that one. That one. What is our guarantee that city officials won't get Senator Tarr and Representative Ferrante to write up a bill that take off the protection to East Gloucester site?
So East Meadows Field had no deed protections. I mean, it was under the care and custody of DPW. It was city land that was taken or purchased, I'm not sure which, from the Cape Pond Ice Company. It was in the 20s. It was not taken, it had nothing to do with the Meadows Field. It had nothing to do with the Meadows family. It had nothing to do with parks and recreation at the time. It wasn't until the 30s that the city decided to and agreed to dedicate the playground at Meadows in that area to Joseph Meadows, and which they did, and they built a nice playground. The playground was not where the field is. The playground was where the school is. Okay, so when in the 50s, when they built Veterans School, they rededicated the playground at the school. The area that has become that is the softball field had been there. It was built at the same time, but it is not deeded or special. East Gloucester, the property at East Gloucester will be deeded by the nature of the Article 97 disposition. It will be deeded that is preserved and dedicated space. So, as I said, you know, you don't know what's going to happen 50 years from now. You know, everybody knows that things can change, but the bottom line is they can't change that very quickly or very easily. It'll require a lot, it has a lot more protections It'll have the same sort of protections as watershed, which are highly protected.
We're almost wrapped up here. There are questions come in. We'd like to hear from the principals. What are you most excited about in the new school, in the design of the new school?
I'll go first. I love the collaborative spaces. The fact that all 4 rooms will be able to, that there'll be walls that will open in between the 2 classrooms. Just the fact that our kids are going to have just beautiful, clean, exciting spaces to be in. It's going to be fantastic. I think the art room is something I'm like super excited. I love how it flows right into the learning commons. So there'll be opportunities for STEM, all types of enrichment. Those are what I'm excited about. But I love the whole thing. I'm excited about the whole thing.
Pasquarello?
I'm excited about the intervention spaces, the collaboration spaces, extended learning areas. The Curiosity Commons or the Media Center is going to be outstanding. As a former media specialist myself, I would have loved to have a space like that to work with. We can have small groups and full classes go in there. They can work collaboratively with the art room. I love that the music room is attached to the stage, and the performances that we will be able to perform in that room will be outstanding. I particularly like that there's a public side of the building and an educational side of the building. So that public side with the gymnasium and the stage and the Curiosity Commons will be open as a community resource, while we can shut down the academic side and keep that safe. The level of security is inconceivable in the current building, and to have that level of safety and cleanliness for our students, it's going to be tremendous.
And then just to, I'm gonna add a couple questions for you. For me is because some things that may not be clear to folks. Matt, you mentioned a learning commons. Can you explain what a learning commons is?
Yeah, it's like it's going to be sort of like a library / area for students to either to study independently, as well as what's called a STEM area. So students can work on science, technology, engineering, type thing. So there'll be an area, like a breakout area from the art room that will transition into the learning commons. So we can combine all those types of things together. I'm missing the word. But.
Great. Great. Thank you for that clarification. Great. Any questions from the panel here for the principals or anyone else? I think the last question here, the gym land belongs to Maxwell, but it's not, that's not, how will you explain that it has been taken without a formal meeting to the neighbors?
That happened in 1948. You know, I don't know what process they went through at that point, but I know they went through a process. And it's not been taken. It's always been there. The Maxwell Parsons playground is there and will continue to be there.
Jonathan, if it's going to be turned into open space, isn't that land given back to the neighbors?
One would think that would be it. Yes, I don't completely understand the question, but like I say, the Maxwell. I would say that when we knew that the Maxwell Parsons playground was deeded, and it wasn't a major consideration, but it was a consideration in our choice of location, because we would have had you know, more issues about trying to build out onto that field, which we would have had to do if we were going to build at East Gloucester site.
Okay. All right. Anything to wrap up? Amy, Matt, Jonathan?
I would say I'm also, I said what I was excited about for the students. I'm also excited for the teachers to have a state-of-the-art facility where they can work and teach and have a healthy environment to do their important work.
Yeah, the teachers have really come through working in substandard buildings to make it a wonderful place. Both schools are a great place for kids. But when they're given this beautiful facility, it's going to make a huge difference.
Great.
I'd just like to thank everybody for listening and hope that more people show up next week. We're going to do this, as Ben said at the beginning, we're going to do it next Tuesday and the Tuesday after at different times. So great.
Great. All right. All right. Thank you, folks. Have a good night. And don't forget to vote. It's civic duty. Thank you.
Bye.